Hey everyone, Pure Insanity here for my first Season 3 video, and it is a brand new spin on the Dolmen Stone builds, the Shred Dolmen Stone. Season 3 has got a lot of criticism so far, and I've been very happy with the development response to it, but I think Season 3 is underrated right now, and we're going to see a lot more interesting builds coming out like this Shred Dolmen Stone build. There are two problem areas with prior Dolmen Stone builds solvable in Season 3, resources and armor. I'm not a huge fan of Disobedience, but now there's Juggernaut, which means both shapeshifting and human form can get 13.3k armor for Tier 100 Nightmare dungeons pretty easily. It opens up a lot of new build options. Another big factor is movement, because the main source of damage is coming from the boulders around you. Most Dolmen Stone builds use Trample, which does help. Ghostwalker can also be used or used in conjunction, making it easier to get damage with boulders, being able to quickly move and get boulders on top of your enemies. But I found a whole new way to get around the movement issue, using Shred. There are three really cool things about using Shred with Dolmen Stone. As already mentioned, there's mobility. Shred makes it really easy to get to the next enemy and into place. Shred is also high damage, and it is great to use while your boulders are damaging the enemies around you. Shred also synergizes really well with Dolmen Stone builds. When using Aspect of the Metamorphic Stone, making Boulder a core skill, it means Shred can end up casting more boulders if you use the Nature's Savagery aspect as well. Now, it can cast Landslide too, but any trigger will help reset Hurricane through the Symbiotic aspect. This variant will be using the Vasili's Prayer to provide quick shift and shape-shifting bonuses to Boulder. But before getting too heavy into the build details, let's get into some more gameplay, and I'll cover game mechanics and the overall build. So let's first talk pros and cons. The big pro is this is both a great mob clearing and boss killing build. It's good for tier 90 plus nightmare dungeons, speed farming, and summon bosses. The con is that it's very mechanical. No doubt I love this build, but if you're running normal activities like Health Tides or Braziers to farm cores, it can get really tedious real quick. So let's segue into the mechanics on that note. Before you get into a big fight, you want to queue up a whole bunch of boulders. You need to hold down the basic attack, Wind Shear, and cast Boulder. That will give your Boulder cast Quick Shift. That will cause you to transfer into human form, gaining 6 Spirit through the Clarity passive to get the 15x Quick Shift bonus on your Boulder, the 20% crit strike chance through the shape-shifting glyph, and stack 10% spirit cost reduction up to 30% from the Inner Beast legendary node. As soon as you see an enemy, cast Shred to teleport straight to them and get into place to cause as much damage as possible with boulders. Reserve Petrify casts for suppressors to take them down easily and hopefully kill the suppressor enemies before they're able to get that back in place. On that note, it's important to discuss a particular aspect now when using Vasili's Prayer and a Dolmen Stone build. The Raw Might aspect is effectively triggered constantly with Dolmen Stone builds using Vasili's Prayer. Each hit from a boulder counts, so it doesn't matter if you're fighting mobs or a single enemy, it's still constantly proccing. The 50% X damage bonus is the most that you're going to see any aspect provide for Boulder, and the stun is going to help a lot with both mobs defensively, but it's also going to add to bosses so you get the stun lock, and so that is a great aspect to have with this particular build. Shred helps spread poison through toxic claws, allowing boulders to get the envenom passive, but it's the seneschal companion that really takes the cake here. Using Tempest with arcing support and poison spreads poison faster than any druid skill can. I've also got breaking to spread vulnerability, which frees up a lot of build options, not having to try to work in vulnerability through skills and or the exploit glyph. When you're on summon boss rotations though, I'd swap out poison support for resource support. You still can get poison applied through shred, and with resource support you can spin up a lot more boulders more quickly. Where this build really shines is tier 80s vault and nightmare dungeon speed farming. This is where I do most of my glyph leveling and gear farming. Since the first Season 3 patch, I have been preferring vaults because the Zoltan's Warding's chest just dump 925 gear and tuning stones. On that note, I'm going to let some of that gameplay run, but if you want to skip to the end, I'll be covering the full build details. I'll also have a link to D4 Planner in the video description. This build is not min-maxed yet at the time of this video, but I've got decent gear and I've got my glyphs to level 15. On that note, while the gameplay is running, I'll discuss some of the details about stat priorities and choices in the build. Use Vasili's Prayer for the helm, turning your boulder into a shapeshifting and werebear skill. The chest piece is all about damage reduction. I am using total armor for a full 13.3k armor and the 85% damage reduction cap in tier 100 nightmare dungeons, but early endgame you can go without it. Attack speed is the #1 glove priority. Prioritize ranks to shred and tornado after that. For your 4th affix, ranks to landslide, willpower, crit strike chance, and cooldown reduction are good options. Legs, prioritize ranks to boulder, total armor, and then damage reduction. I know Tibbs is the fan favorite, but you actually get better damage and survivability without Tibbs for this build. And the reason why Tibbs isn't needed for spirit generation is because aspect of the Umbral is a resource generation beast for boulder. Each time boulder hits an enemy, it applies knockback. That's why resources generate so quickly against even a single enemy. Do get spirit cost reduction and resource generation wherever possible. Max resource isn't really that valuable in this build because the resource generates so quickly you don't really need it. Damage stat priorities are willpower, crit strike chance, physical damage, crowd control damage, vulnerable damage, and then crit strike damage. The treasure room in vaults can be a little hairy for this build, and that's the case too if you're using trample. So your movement is a little bit chaotic and unpredictable, and you've got to deal with the suppressors. So a lot of times you might die because you end up getting stuck in traps or in a bad position between all of them because, again, you're not controlling your movement as much as you are in other builds. So that's all the commentary and gameplay that I've got for now. I hope you enjoyed the build and the video, the build details, including the skill tree, Paragon board, etc., etc. They're coming up in just a few seconds here. So if you try this build out, I hope you really enjoy it too. And if you do, give me a comment. Let me know what you think and how it worked out for you.